going to speak today about the strategies and guidelines for successful integrative lighting implementations in hospitals. And I guess I'm going to give you more questions than answers, but at least I think that this is a field where we still have to do a lot of development, but we can also do real work right now if we do it, we do these questions in advance. So about me, I am a consultant and a researcher at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, but I work remotely since 1.5 years ago. I'm also an independent consultant in the field of integrative lighting and human-centric lighting. I have a PhD in multidisciplinary science that I did at Mount Sinai Hospital and Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in New York. I also have a master's degree in multidisciplinary science, a graduate certificate in lighting from the Queensland University of Technology in Australia, and a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Spain. And I also have I'm a well building standard accredited professional, and I have been working in many different lighting committees, like this, the healthcare facilities lighting, lighting for the elderly, lighting systems, and visual ergonomics. About my team at Mount Sinai, my initial team, as you can see here, is multidisciplinary. It's not about lighting designers. It's about clinicians and specialists in patient safety, in emergency medicine, in healthcare facilities, and of course, all what we have at the bottom, facilities management, healthcare informatics, ethics, leadership, and innovation. Without all these components, it's impossible to achieve a proper implementation. What is quite important is that we have received innovation awards at Mount Sinai for what we have developed. We have also received design considerations for our work, what is quite strange in research. And we have also received scientific recognition for the work that we have done. So I think that we have most of the components: innovation, design, and science. So let's begin with this trending topic that is integrative lighting. That is a definition by the CIE. The first thing is that lighting is not only light. And the definition is lighting that has an intention for, and this is quite important because we need this intention to achieve something, is about to integrate visual and non-visual effects. And this is a mistaken definition because it should be stimulus. We are not giving effects, we give stimulus. And we try to produce positive psychophysiological effects in humans. And as I said before, lighting is not about light, it's about the delivery of light. So when you hear something about these topics as blue light or whatever light, you have to be very careful because it's not only about the light, but about how do you deliver it and when. And finally, just to make a clarification, even if I guess that most of you know it, we have to differentiate here between visual and non-visual. Visual is just a pure visual function, what you see and for image forming. And non-visual is what many people call circadian, but is far more than this. It's about psychophysiology, sleep, anxiety, wellness. If we consider hospitals, because there are many other healthcare facilities, we have to differentiate hospitals by admission, because you have many hospitals that only work on planned treatments, other works in emergency, and most of them are hybrid. You have also to differentiate between stays, short and long stay. And you also have telemedicine, that is going to be a very important topic in the future, where the house is becoming the hospital of the future. And finally, the business model of the hospital, public, private, hybrid, because at the end, what is important is who pays the bill for what we do. So with all this in mind, we think that we have something, but we only have the tip of the iceberg of what hospital lighting is. And let's go into detail about why is this. So we will try to cover all these points briefly. So the current situation in healthcare lighting, as many of you already know, is that lighting is a commodity. It's associated mainly to mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. No IT involvement. It enters very late into projects, so when you already have the constraints and very low budget. The price, the cost is very important, and the cheaper is usually the better. The specifications differ from what you get finally implemented at the hospital. It's more design than total life cycle, and we will discuss this. There is a poor user interface or user experience. Most of them only have the on-off switch, and when you go into some kind of intelligent lighting, no one understands it. And it has static lighting delivery with no changes during the day or night. So we end up having too much light at the biological night, and we have very low light levels during the day. That is a kind of daylight psychophysiological darkness. So sleep is not a design criteria, but it's key for patients' recovery. And we have lack of localization. Some critical points that we should promote here is that natural sleep promotion is a key factor in the hospital. We should go into non-hospital appearance in design because we don't want to be in the hospital. So don't hire current hospital lighting designers if you want to design future hospitals. We need to have an easy integration with the existing infrastructure. Staff training and commitment is very important. Total life cycle versus acquisition cost is also key. And the IT paradigm, where we have this user interface, user experience, IoT, IOB, personalized medicine. IOB is a term that is coming that is called Internet of the Bodies, that goes beyond the Internet of Things. Here you can see a picture of what you usually find in the hospital. So when you go into the equipment, it's not only to put the lighting, you have to deal with many other critical installations. About energy efficiency in healthcare lighting, if we consider the cost of a bed in the US in healthcare, and we consider the standard consumption of an LED system, and we go into home, we can reduce length of stay through lighting, we will see that a patient room costs for around 2,500 US per day. Intensive care unit can go up to 10,000 per day. A standard lighting system will consume about 600, 1 kilowatt per day. This is 0.10 US dollars per day. And if you consider that you can reduce length of stay by 35%, it looks that we have to do the right numbers about lighting efficiency in healthcare. We have to go more into social efficiency, because if we go into chronic disease, we will see that the cost that derives from chronic disease goes up to 3.5 trillion annually. So there is more to consider than just energy efficiency. And here we go to this point about daylight, because many people speak about daylight, but there is no clear definition about what daylight is. So let's go into this outdoor daylight versus indoor daylight. This is a typical distribution of outdoor daylight, but if you go through glazing and you remove UV and infrared, this is what you get in indoor daylight. That is different from outdoor daylight. If you compare what you get with a regular blue pumped LED, you will see that there is a big difference with indoor daylight. But if you go into full spectrum LEDs, you will see that you can achieve similar spectrum with them. And as an example, you have this one from Seoul Semiconductor, the Sunlight, that you will see in many different places here at the floor. The CIE, that is the authority in lighting, has done many recommendations for illuminance. The first one came in 1931. Then there was a revision in 1967 for daylight, and another one in 2009 for indoor daylight. I'm not going into this detail, but just only to say that we have this average daylight. Then it was moved into the D65 that most of you will know. That is the base for melanopic equivalent daylight illuminance. That is basic for the non-visual effects in lighting. And then in 2009, if you consider this, what I mentioned, we go into the indoor daylight 65. So we have to question ourselves if we can go into indoor daylight rather than just consider daylight for building purposes. Localization, as I said, quite important, and it has also been discussed before. Are lighting solutions the same worldwide? And you will think that in places like Alaska or Canada and the Middle East, lighting solutions should be different by definition. And this is not the case, because indoor daylight and darkness requirements are almost the same everywhere. You still have culture, but most of the conditions are going to be the same. And if you study in terms of outdoor daylight the deficiency in vitamin D, you will see that people in the Middle East may have the same lack of vitamin D as in Canada. And this is because people don't go outside and they protect themselves from daylight, outdoor daylight. So in hospitals, we will find that we can see that the requirements can be the same. Localization will depend on eye color, age, and health. And you have to be extremely careful with this about personal preferences and surveys, because this is the same as asking children about candies or healthy food. They will also like the candy. So people usually don't know the light that they need. They can tell you the light that they prefer. Personalized medicine is a key point here. Lighting can be a drug that affects humans. This can be considered as a clinical treatment. So we need to ask ourselves who is going to do the prescription, and we will need a multidisciplinary implementation team for this. We need the integration of the lighting environment into the clinical records. It has to be with the vitals and health records, and it has to be with the health records post-discharge. And also very important is bioethics and informed consent. Should we consider it or not? And all this, what we said about IoT, IOB, IA, and big data approach. I just want to show you here a couple of pictures of systems that you can, data that you can acquire in healthcare from the systems. This is something that I already spoke about 7 years ago. We have sources, we have controls, we have sensors for the building, sensors for the people, for the occupants. This is what then we define targets about the affective states that we want to achieve, and then we change the sources according to this. About this big data paradigm, again, this is from 2015. What we have here is that this approach about big data is what we already know that works in people. How can we deliver this in real time? So we will go into recipes for, let's say, kind of illnesses. So from personalized medicine, we go into personalized lighting. And final word about total cost of ownership, the whole life cycle versus the acquisition cost. And we will discuss here about before implementation, implementation, after implementation, and transition. In the before implementation, these are factors that we have to consider. It's going to be the lighting gear that is typical. Then we will go into the environment, because this is going to change the delivery of the light. Communications, about cabling, wireless, interaction with clinical IT, security, that is very important, software, and this is something that is becoming more critical in new lighting implementations, control software, the user interface software, and the data delivery. How are we going to deliver this cycling of the light? And this can be delivered by third-party companies. That is a new business model that will come in the future. Training, how are we going to train our staff and our maintenance people? And risk analysis, liabilities that we can find, because a patient can say that the health state was worse because of the light. Warranties and insurance, and very important, scalability, because in this new IT model, it can happen that the solution is only valid for X number of beds, and it is not going to be feasible for the whole hospital. And the acquisition. Many people are discussing now about ownership and lighting as a service, and you have to be very careful here, because in the case of lighting as a service, it may happen that you can default in payments in the future, or that the company that is providing the service can go into bankruptcy, and you will have to see how to solve these issues beforehand. And also very important is intellectual property of this dynamic. If we go into the implementation, you have to differentiate between new and existing facilities. If it is an existing facility, the off-duty cost of not having these rooms operational is going to be very important. Is again, equipment delivery and stockpiling is going to be very important. The coordination of the team, the permits, and the IP risk on who is going to be involved in the implementation. It can be on-site people of the hospital, of the contractors, and you can have also third-party subcontractors, either from the hospital or from the main contractor. And finally, you can have remote people, and then you have to provide this security access that is going to be very critical. And in the after implementation factors, and this is the long term of the project, that is also critical here, you have to consider hardware aging of the light sources, the fixtures, the electronics, the sensors, the power supplies, the control gear. That is something that is becoming kind of new. The software updates and upgrades that you are going to need in the system, in the control software, in the user interface, and in the data delivery. So it may happen that with the same system, you will be able to deliver different lighting solutions in the future as science discover that new let's say new spectra can be more beneficial than other, and this can happen with the same equipment in the future. Communications, cabling infrastructure, the wireless infrastructure, the security, and training and support for the staff and for the maintenance. And finally, feedback and lessons learned for future implementations. And finally, if we go into key performance indicators, we can discuss about if we go into the patients, that is going to be the delivery of care. We have to go into quality of sleep, not about quantity, but quality of sleep. The reduction in medication, particularly in anxiety, pain, and sleep medication. Improvement of recovery, reduction in length of stay, reduction in readmission. Because you can say, okay, this patient can go to the house earlier, but it may happen too early. So readmission rate is also very important. And again, very cautious about patient satisfaction and surveys. About the staff, patient safety is very important. We also have to consider wellness and stress reduction of the staff and ease of use. And visitors. Do we want to have visitors in the hospital? We have to differentiate in long versus short-term stay for the patients. Easy of maintenance and upgrades, the down and off-duty times of the infrastructure, and the IT resources allocation and security issues, incidents and severity of the incidents that we will have. So finally, I hope that I have given to you a little bit of perspective about this hospital lighting, at least You will have more questions now than before. And a final message. Proper lighting at the house and at the workspaces and living spaces can improve natural wellness, promote health, reduce chronic disease, and reduce hospitalizations. So why not begin improving regular lighting based in this indoor daylight concept? And Middle East is a perfect area for further research and outreach, education and training, and probably new standards development that don't have to come from other places. So thank you for your attention, and welcome if you have any questions.